so we left off. Neil had just gotten home, and everything was great, and he was doing good. Well, I shouldn't say great. I guess when he first came home, it was really a struggle, but slowly we worked out the anxieties, and things were really going well. We were trying to line up things for the farm. That was kind of what we were trying to do, a lease, and it was slowly kind of appearing we may need to sell. And I really remember one moment confronting Neil and being like, it just does not look like we're going to be able to lease. Like, I think we need to be able to, can you sell? And I remember he was really teary about it, but he was like, yeah, if that's what we have to do, you know, if God has shut the door for a lease, then that's what we'll do. So he was home the whole month of January, well, pretty much the whole month of January. And it was so strange because Neil, all our married life, he never took one day off, like unless we left the state, not one day, ever, not one day. It was every day, at least 12 hours, and we never had a day off together. So, like, it was weird. We didn't know what that looked like, and, like, I had a hard time when he would get home before, I would stop what I was doing to try to be with him. And so it was very strange to be like, well, okay, life has to go on. We can't just party every day. But we did a lot of partying. We went and did all sorts of fun things as a family, and it just felt like a dream. Like, this can't be real life. And I remember saying to him, I mean, I could run the farm, and you could just be a stay-at-home dad. And, like, but so the problem with the farm, so it's hard to explain if you don't understand pigs, but we are farrow to wean. So you're breeding pigs to be pregnant. Their pregnancy's around 4 months, and there's always pigs in the barn having babies and being weaned, always. So it's a continuous cycle. So we had lost pretty much all our gilts. So those are the replacements. So there's 4 groups of pigs that rotate to make a continuous cycle. I think it's 4 groups. And so every group, you lose some, or they need culled, or so we would typically bring in about 30 new ones every 4 months, or every 2 weeks we'd bring in, because every group, I believe that's right. So we didn't have those replacements. And again, a pig pregnancy is 4 months, so even if you immediately lined up new gilts, that's 4 months till they're even old enough to, well, not even then, they'd have to be old enough to breed. But anyways, so that was kind of there was a time limit on it, because eventually your supply of piglets is going to be so low that, like, people aren't going to want us. And so our contractor, Doug, also told us he didn't want to work with us anymore, and he was patient for us to find a solution, but, like, we were not going to get more replacement gilts, so we needed to find something. So that's why there was a time crunch. Like, we kind of figured so this was January of 22 now, we kind of thought we might make it till, like, August, if things go okay. And again, like, their pregnancy's 4 months, so every month that you're going without pigs means down the road there's no babies coming either. So we did our best, and we tried to keep breeding what we had and not calling any pigs, and so that was the time crunch of, like, and so our brains had to kind of start going, okay, if we can't find somebody, what's at the end of this? Like, it's bankruptcy, because you don't have an option. Like, your income is stopping at some point, and Doug doesn't want to continue on with us. We have to find somebody. So we started looking for a job for Neil in this meantime, and I was just sending texts around. Neil is the most talented person on the planet. He can literally do anything. And so that was no issue. But we decided it needed to be an 8-hour-a-day thing where he said, I just want to clock in, clock out, and be done. And so we were looking for jobs like that. And I called Bill Hartzler at Lau & Young. He said, oh, man, I just hired somebody. And, you know, soon we might have a position, but I don't right now. And he said, but, Ann, this Kurt Steiner that has a dairy farm, Steinhurst Dairy, he just lost his brother. And he said, I talk to him every Sunday at church, and he is just hurting and they need somebody bad. And I was like, I don't really want Neil to go to a dairy farm. Like, that's going to be really hard for him to stick to 8 hours. I know how farming works. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, and so I kind of blew that off. And at some point, I did send Kurt a text. I said, I don't know, everybody was telling me, Kurt Steiner, Kurt Steiner. And so I was like, Kurt, I don't know, I've heard this. And we kind of texted back and forth. And I said, you know what, we're doing really good here. I think right now we're just going to wait for the perfect job for Neil. He's doing good at home. We had lists of stuff he was working on at home. And I just didn't like the idea of the farm. And Kurt was like, that's okay. But people just were constantly saying it to us. And so then around, I remember distinctly, at the very end of January, Neil kind of had gone through the list. And I said, well, you can take over laundry. And I remember at that point was when it was suddenly like, I need to get a job. He was not interested in doing laundry. I know. And honestly, I hadn't even, at that point, life was so busy. I wasn't even putting laundry away or folding it. It was just in a pile. So I sent him down like,
we were really this laundry done, and that did not last long. He did not complete that task. And so Kurt had called my dad and said, I just am so desperately in need of somebody. Everybody keeps telling me about this Neil Ramseyer, and he didn't even know who he was. He said, I don't know, John, what do I do? And Dad said, well, I'll tell him again. And so I told him that night, and that was the day of the laundry, and he went, I don't know, maybe I'll just go help him a little bit. And we talked, and I called Kurt, and I said, like, look, we're not interested in this being long-term, and this has to be 8 hours, and he's out of there, and he was very like, yep, nope, that's what we're going to do. And in all honesty, as you know, he still works there. It has been absolutely a godsend. They both have lost someone. Neil was a godsend to Kurt. Kurt was a godsend to Neil. They just connected on so many things. They praise Neil, and I never knew Neil needed, I shouldn't say needed that, but I didn't know he was like a words of affirmation person. I just would have never guessed that. And he just thrives under knowing he's appreciated. And I think being on the farm before, he was by himself all the time. And it's not even that he like needed to be affirmed, but I think there just comes a point where you're doing so much and nobody ever sees it, doesn't matter, you know, like, so that and having co-workers and conversation, that's all stuff he didn't have at the farm, and it's just been wonderful. He feeds cows, but then he goes and just fixes stuff nonstop. The Steiners are really good at breaking stuff, and Neil's really good at fixing stuff. So he has great house security. But so, in the meantime, this is end of January. I think I had said last night we met with this huge hog farmer, probably the biggest hog farmer in probably like mid-east of the country, and he really liked our barn. Neil did a good job on our barn, and it was a barn people wanted. And so we were talking to him, but he would have to double that barn to make it profitable for him. And that's why lease came out with him, because we're like, we're not doubling this barn. But again, when you're that big, then like Department of Ag gets involved, and it just turns into another thing. And he's such a big farmer. So we were investigating all these things and floodplains and all this stuff, and it was very hard not to like despair, because it was very slow. But finally this guy came over and he offered us so much money. I mean, Neil and I would have retired easily. Like, it was so much money, but he wanted Neil to manage the farm. Mm-hmm. And we just, oh my goodness, we just wrestled. And it was very hard for Neil to say no to that. Like, he kept saying, well, I could go back, it could be different and all this stuff. And I kept saying, no, like, what would be different about it? I mean, nothing would really be different other than we aren't in charge of finances, which was a big deal before, but we just wrestled round and round with it. And the thing and later this became our constant go-to, is, okay, what does God want from us? He wants us to put him first, and then our family, and then work. That was something we just continually had to be like, okay, what's important, and if we do this, those things won't be honored. And so we ended up saying no to him, and that was really hard. And yeah, it was really hard. It's still hard sometimes. Neil will say, just think how much money we would have. I know. You just can't think about it. But so we kept going on, and this guy was great. He said, well, I'll pass it along as much as I can. And he was like, reach out to me anytime. And he actually called Monday during the fire. He heard, and he called Neil, and he's a good guy, but it just didn't work. So it was a hard blow. So the only other real lead we had was this Ed Schaup, and he's the one that had kind of given us this other guy's number, and he would call and check in. And then all of a sudden one day he said, well, maybe he's a hog farmer, and he leases his barns to Kalmbach Feed. Or I guess, yeah. And that works well for him. And he said, maybe if they would lease this barn from me, maybe I would be interested. But I couldn't do it unless they would be interested. And so there was this little, okay. And he would call every once in a while and just, okay, he's still waiting to hear from them, And time just went on, and it just was waiting and no leads, and I'm calling, and I'm handling the sale. Neil didn't want to be involved, so it was me. And so it was and I hate phone calls. I hate them, especially stuff like this. So I'm, anybody I get a phone number, calling them, hi, are you interested in buying our hog farm? And I just called anybody I could, and nobody was interested. And so I don't know, I'm going to read you what I posted on Facebook at one point. I was trying to remember all these things in time, and at the beginning of February I posted, I used to wonder how the Israelites could witness the miracles they did, and time after time immediately turn around and doubt God. How when Moses was up on the mountain with God, the people could so quickly turn around and make a golden calf. I used to literally laugh and say in Bible study groups or around the kitchen table, how weak can your faith be to so quickly forget? But man, we humans, we forget fast. The last 12 weeks of my life has been, how do I describe, a journey, a roller coaster. It was sometimes painful, terrifying, stuff from your worst nightmare, but also peace and awe and thanksgiving and praise and worship and transformation and healing and good change. God literally picked me up and talked to me and carried me. Things in our home are different now. Amazing. God truly performed a miracle. All glory to Jesus. Everything is different, and years of prayers were answered. I'm privileged to experience the peace that passeth all understanding. Genuine peace. Others around me, also involved, couldn't comprehend why I was okay. It is an amazing feeling to be held and snuggled in the Father's arms. Only a trial can bring you so close to God's magnificence. Then, somewhere along the way, in the last 2 weeks or so, in the midst of the greatest blessings and answered prayers I've ever experienced, I lost my peace. It was replaced with anxiety and panic. I knew it left and I wanted it back, but I couldn't let go of my fears and control. We are still facing some big trials and scary potential outcomes and consequences. But in the grand scheme of things, these phase 2 trials, well, enormous and real as they are, they actually matter less than phase 1 of our trial. So as I found myself trying to get my peace back, I was trying to worship completely, trying to surrender completely. But how do you do that? How do you force yourself to let go? I don't know, but I started searching the Bible for stories of faith, singing worship songs at the top of my lungs, rebuking the demons in Jesus' name that whispered in my ear to get out. And a few nights ago, I found my peace again. I surrendered and I told God His timing, His control, His plan, no matter what that means. I meant it this time, and when I truly gave it to Him, my peace came back. It's really a real thing, peace that floods over you, and you know it's going to be okay, even when the world standards it's not. God is so good. He is so good. He cares so much about us. I know that His name will be glorified in whatever way He takes us all. I know His ways are so much greater than our ways. I cannot wait until the day that I can share this testimony and publicly share what God has done and give him the glory. Until then, I trust in my Savior to lead us, and I will wait for you to show us our next move. I'm ashamed to say I can now relate to the Israelites. I realize how quickly we can forget the miracles God has revealed to us and does for us. How quickly we can allow doubt to creep in. How quickly we can forget that he orchestrates everything, and it's so beautiful and perfect. We don't need to put our 2 cents in. I don't want to ever forget the magnitude of what God has already done and how much I trust him to handle the future. Thank you, Lord. Forgive me for forgetting for a short time what you've taught me and what you've done for us. I want to always remember. It's been 12 weeks. I'm still so grateful for all the love, support, and prayers. I still haven't gotten thank yous out. Still haven't. Because you're still doing it for me, and life is insane. But I know I think of you. But no, I think of you all, and that it did and does mean so much to us. And we thank God for our armies of friends and family, and that is so true. But that was where I was at, and that became, getting that no was just such a like, what are we going to do now? And that was in February. I had no idea how much longer we had ahead of us. But it was interesting. God started absolutely slamming our lives with the Israelites. Just everywhere we turned, it was, Ryan talked about Israelites. Wes would talk about Israelites. Do you remember the Sunday school was going through all the Israelites? Ryan would read like Exodus 14, and I had read that this morning, and then I'd flip my daily planner, Exodus 14, like just I just can't even. I wish I would have documented, because it was literally like everywhere. And Neil and I would be like, oh look, there it is. So we kept saying, well, what does this mean? Like, and we just started thinking, I think it's wait, because the Israelites just waited for 40 years, waited, and like I said, it was the same as us, like same as the Israelites. God had shown them, like, look, here I am, God, and he had done that to us, and we knew that. But yet you're like, come on, let's get this over with, I'm done, let's go, when is the answer? And that's where we were at, and it was just crazy how that was surrounded. And it's hard to wait, especially when you're trained to take action. I feel like I was trained to take action and make stuff happen, and you couldn't. There was nothing. I would call all these people, and you'd send them pictures, and they'd never call back, and you'd call again, and you'd call vets, and you'd call hog farmers, and and there was just nothing you could do. And we felt really just discouraged, and then Ed Schaup would call, and you'd be like, okay, just every once in a while he'd call. So he was just and so we just started thinking, maybe we're just supposed to wait on him, because he hasn't given us a no. He's the only potential lead. So, and again, my little Goodness of God Alexa song would always pop on, right? And it was mostly me that would be like, this is ridiculous. What are we waiting on? And I'm still running everything at the farm. And Neil's working now. And so he had to take Thursdays off, because Thursday we would wean pigs, and I have to get up at 2:30 and go out and wean the pigs. And it was just tough. It was a tough time. It was hard work, but it was also like, how can I be unhappy? Like, what really matters is our family, and we're all very happy, but it was just this looming bankruptcy approaching. And then someone said something to me about, and I'm still running my dog kennel too with my brother, and I forget who, maybe the accountant or somebody mentioned, like, oh, I was investigating bankruptcy, and I was doing this on my own as well, because Neil was like, well, I'll go back to the barn before we file bankruptcy. And I just kept thinking, I'm going to have to push this into action almost without him, because we will not sacrifice Neil just to keep our stuff. And that was something I really had to wrestle with. And so anyways, whoever it was said to me, well, you're an owner of the kennel, like, they can come back and that, more than anything else, hit me like, I don't know, I could embrace losing our house and the farm and the property, but I don't know, the kennel's my business, and I've never lived without it, and my brother's a partner, and I was like, and I didn't even tell Steve, because I was like, he will flip out, like, but that was a huge worry of mine, of like, this, I don't know, it's just scary, but I had to really kind of accept what's most important. Again, this is where we came back to what's most important. We said that over and over when we would try to be deciding things, like God, family, then work, and that kind of was our compass. During these times of waiting, I feel like it came to me that you can either wallow in it, or you can choose to worship God for the good things and remember. And so I would, many times, the two things that just would flash to me because they were so clearly God are the moment I got that text, because it was just a God moment that I got it, and that thing with Jason where I heard God saying that, and just Neil's recovery. So I would just force myself, like, remember those things, and ponder on the good. But waiting is way, I don't want to say way harder, but in a way it is, because there's just nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. So we started kind of haggling with Ed. Again, it was super slow, and months would go on, and he'd be like, I'll let you know. And then I can't tell you how many times when Neil and I would be hashing, should we call him, should we check in, he would call, and a lot of times he would say, still don't have an update. But it was just like right when we were just done. And then we started a Bible study at church on the Hebrews 11, and it's all about faith and all the big people in that chapter. And Neil and I just really leaned into that, I feel like, and you were in that, Amy and Charlotte, and I don't know, that was just for us, I feel like, and a lot of the lessons in it really applied to us. Again, I said this kind of last night, but when you're in these situations, especially those closest to you, have a lot of opinions, and a lot of the people in these chapters, they had the same thing, and they had to choose, I'm doing what God wants us to do. And Neil and I, we had no doubt God was telling us to wait, and that doesn't make sense, to kind of wait at a time when you're coming to the end of your time limit. But that's what God told us, and there were some really difficult times when it was like we kind of had to just stick together and be like, this is what God's telling us, and we can't hear all these outside opinions. And that's hard. That's really hard, especially when you're from close families. It's really hard to not care, but to be like, no, we know what God wants us to do, and we can't listen to these outside voices. And it made no sense for us to keep waiting on Ed, but we did. And so this takes us all the way through end of May, and we had been hashing prices because Ed couldn't buy it, and he wanted us to finance, and all these, we just were anything we could think of, we were trying to work through. And on May 31st, which ironically, as I was writing this down, I was like, that's like exactly a year ago. He told us, I can't do it. We can't make this work. And he was friends with my dad. He called my dad and said, it's done. We said our goodbyes and thank yous. And at that point, it was like, we're done. I mean, what more do we do here? And we'd been praying for doors to open and shut. So we were like, well, it has to just be another shut door. And Neil and I kept a few days later talking about something Ed had said. And I said, are we misunderstanding each other? Do you think he understood that's what we meant? So I just sent Ed a text, and I said, I just want to clarify that we are on the same page. And he called me, and he said, I think you should make an appointment with your lawyer. And I was like, okay, why? And he said, well, to talk about financing. And I was like, for what? I thought you were done. And he went, oh no, I still to this day am like, I don't know why you're just assuming. We never had this conversation, but so we haggled and haggled and haggled and haggled and haggled. And my brother's in sales, and I mean, I brag him up like he's the best salesman on the planet, because he would call me, Ann, do not say a price. Let him say the price. And do not, like, and I'd call him, okay, he just said this, and because I'm the one doing this, I don't know how to sell a farm. Like, and we're working our way through it, and I give Steve a lot of credit. He gave me a lot of good advice. But finally, and the other part of this, to back up to the first big farmer, he had wanted all our property. So like, we'd get our house, we have 28 acres, and that property, it backs up to my whole family's. Like, it's just land, and that's what we had told. But like, it was so important to me that we would get to keep something, and I was like, I don't even know if I want to live here if we don't own anything, and that's just my dream. I want animals, and I want, and so the part of the thing with Ed, he's like, I don't need all the property. I just need, I think he said, I need 9 acres that's just around the barn. And so we agreed that on what he could have, and I would get all that I wanted, the parts, and it was just like, this is worth it. Like, this is, I don't know. And so July 5th, they took over, and we signed our leases, and they took over, and it took a while to get the transition, but Neil and I had been saying, if we sell our farm, we're going to take off, and we're going to go on an East Coast trip. And we did. We took off. We had nothing planned, not one thing. We had no hotels booked, but it was such a fun adventure. So we took off, and we slept at a YMCA parking lot, and we woke up and went, okay, where should we stay tonight? And we'd find a place, and then every night we'd find where we were going to go the next night. And it was like, I don't want to say magical, but it was just like a magical, it was just, your brain can't adjust that quickly. And we've never been able to go that, like, for a week and without Neil being worried. And it was just like, okay, here we go. It was the best trip. And we met with Doug, our contractor, and he was so kind and Christian and compassionate, and he was so generous to us. We owed him everything, and it just seemed like everything just clicked, and I don't know, it was such a, and again, like, right in the nick of time. I mean, right in the nick of time. But who would have ever thought we would have had to, we did not know how long we were going to have to wait. And I remember, again, sorry to read all these Facebook posts, but I swear I documented stuff. I posted on July 21st, it's just too big of a moment not to commemorate. 8 months and 8 days ago, Neil and I sat in a room at the Worcester ER, and they told us he wasn't going to be coming home for a few days, which morphed into much longer. I hadn't worked in the barn for 5 years since having Ava. Neil turned to me and started telling me all the things I needed to do to keep the barn running. Stuff I have never done, even when I worked there. Stuff only Neil ever did. I sat there typing notes on my phone, trying to be courageous and not show my feelings. After the barrage of instructions, he went to the bathroom, and the nurse that had been posted to our room and that had sat there and listened stood up and came over and gave me a big hug. She said, wow, that was a lot. I'm a farmer's wife too, and I know how overwhelmed I'd be. I semi-broke down in her arms till Neil came back. I don't know who she was. She was pregnant at Worcester Hospital. I wish I could tell her thank you for her kindness. I'll never forget that moment when the weight of what I was about to do started to hit me in the face. Neil was gone for 40 days. Tears streamed down my face at that memory. Those 40 days were some of the hardest I've ever endured. Worst of all, being that Neil's dad died during that time, and I had to tell Neil over the phone. I guess I must have told him over the phone. But I also never in my life ever walked and talked with God like I did those first 3 to 4 months of acute trial. It was such a gift, a joy, and a blessing. And if you're skeptical and you don't know what I mean, ask me. I'd like to attempt to explain to you. without making you feel judged, just what happened. Anyways, a lot happened during that time, and I feel God was very strongly putting it on my heart to find a time to share our story in detail, because it's God's story, not ours. It's not ours to keep quiet. It's a story that glorifies God and how much He loves us and provides, even though it took forever. So back to this morning. Every 2 weeks, our baby piglets get weaned off their mamas at 3 weeks old, and they're loaded onto a semi to go to a new barn. The truck comes at 4 a.m. to be loaded. So every 2 weeks, I had to have someone here at the house for the kids, and I'd go down at 3:30 a.m. and load pigs. That's our wonderful employees already started weaning hours prior. I'd have to write for an hour to explain the ins and outs of what happened. Short story is, God worked in our hearts and our minds, and Neil and I started looking for someone to lease or buy our farm, and eventually we found someone in the nick of time. All that to say, today I watched the truck drive out our driveway from my house window while Neil, Ava, and Nora all slept. I really can't put into words what that felt like. Pure joy and thanksgiving. Thank you, God, for providing. That doesn't seem like an adequate statement of praise. I hope I can share our testimony and express how adequately God has worked. But for today, thank you, Lord. I don't know. I knew I was supposed to share this. I've known a long time, and it's gotten harder as time has gone on because the adrenaline wears off and the feelings wear off. But that was over 8 months later. And then we went on our road trip. The things were just so good, and I was just amazed at how life was. So Ed leases from us, and he leases to Kalmbach, and somebody else owns the pig. So it's like a whole, that's all the stuff we had to figure out. And Kalmbach's been so good. They actually, because it's like renting your house, so like we're in charge of the structure, but like even things that are outside our responsibility, but Neil's the one that knows how to fix. They pay him very well to come in and work on that, and like it's just been, I was worried about that, Neil working down there, but it's been good because he doesn't feel like he had to give it all up, but he doesn't have to do it. So I kept thinking the ball's gonna drop. I remember thinking, somebody telling me, you're either in a trial, leading up to a trial, or coming down from a trial. And I remember being really scared, thinking, we're coming down from a trial. So that means the next phase is you're going back to a trial. And so last fall, like September, I remember it was about September, I don't know, like I kind of told you guys last night, all the like wonderful feelings were still there, but life caught up with me all of a sudden. So like, and till July, I was still just running 300 miles an hour. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. And then I'm coming home, like I said, I'm not joking. I did not put away laundry for, how long was that? 8 months? I literally did not. And so you come home to like, okay, I gotta get back to putting away laundry. And now we gotta find a new routine, and you can't party forever. Every Thursday when Neil was off for a while, we'd just go do fun things, and that's not, I don't know, it just kind of, life started kicking back in, and it wasn't like I was depressed, but I just feel like I wasn't functioning quite right. Like I was just slow to function, and I could not catch up. I just couldn't catch up with anything. Even the things I always loved to do in the yard and stuff, I just can't quite get it done. And just when I feel like in the last few months, I've been starting to feel like I'm feeling normal again. Like I think I'm getting back to normal. As you guys all know, the barn burnt down on Monday, and we're not going to be normal for a long time. And I don't know, I wanted to kind of share what happened. Did everybody hear, or should I say that again? The story of the barn? You should say it. Okay. So this Monday was Memorial Day, and Neil decided he was going to work, feed cows, and then come home at maybe noon, and we were maybe going to go canoeing in Canal Fulton. And Ava really wanted to do something fun. And I was kind of like, you know, I got stuff to do. And I wanted to go down to Yoder's greenhouse and get a tree. And so she likes to go to the greenhouse. I said, you can each pick out flowers. And so we decided, let's go down to the greenhouse. So we went down and we left our house at 11. And we were picking our stuff. The girls were picking their flowers. And we were at the checkout. And I got a call from Josh Steiner. And he says, your barn is on fire. And I went, what barn? And I'm thinking the dog kennel, like our little pony shed, what? He said, the hog barn. And I said, like fire? Yeah, fire. And he said, I called 911 and I called Neil. And I went, oh my goodness. And I was checking out and I said to the lady, can you hurry? So she moved like a snail. It was so dumb that I just was like, so we literally ran through the parking lot. The rocks, I was thinking the stuff was just threw it in the back of the van. And I was like, get in and buckle up. And I was just shaking. Well, and before that, I immediately called. As soon as he called, I called Sarah Hugh, one of the employees. I said, get out, emergency. And he could not understand me. And I said, text, I'll text you. And so I was just firing off like fire, 911, emergency, police, like anything I could think that maybe he'd understand. And we found out later Josh was there and they did run right out. So I got the call at 12:13 and we have a video he took at 12:20 where he did get right out. But so the barn, there's two barns. There's a farrowing barn where the mamas are. So it's half mamas with 2-week-old babies and half mamas that would have been having babies this week. And they were in the other barn breeding pigs. And they didn't even know anything was happening. He said the lights flickered, but that could have been already on fire, or it could have maybe been something happening. We don't really know. And so who knows? I mean, they didn't have a clue. So then I had called him, and then I called Dusty, who manages the farm now, and he was 2 hours away. I was in Kidron, or wherever Yoder's greenhouse is, and Neil was at work at Steinhurst. My parents, my dad was in Sardis, my mom was in Iowa, Steve and Brenda. They were in Iowa. They all live right there, could have seen it. I mean, just praise the Lord, Josh saw it. So I called Josh back and I said, Josh, and that point I was like, Neil is going to run into that barn. I know Neil. And I said, Josh, you have to keep Neil from running into that barn. And he said, okay, I'll go back. And so we flew home and we came through Orville. I think I missed some turns because I wouldn't have normally come through Orville, I feel like. But I came through Orville and it was like I could see the smoke and you're driving towards it and it's like, and I said to the girls, that's our barn on fire. And at that point they had been scared. We had been running to the car and I started saying, guys, Jesus knew this was going to happen. It's okay. It's just a barn. And they were like, yeah. And I don't know. They just weren't real riled up. But so we turned off 57 onto Pleasant Home and there were cars just turning that way. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I could see as I passed people, there were several like people on the phone. So I'm sure they were calling 911 because I could see them on the phone like pointing. And so then when I crossed 94, that whole section of Pleasant Home, both ways, was parked cars looking down at the smoke. And I was just, the closer you get, you're just like, I got to get there. And I'm worried about Neil. And I'm honking the horn. And I can vision this, there was like a Jeep or something in front of me. And this little girl kept looking back at me. And at this point, I'm about at like Grace's driveway. So I could see down the valley, the farm. And I was like, that's my barn, out of the way. Like, and they wouldn't move. And finally I got around them. And I went down Poor Road and I couldn't get to the farm lane. There was fire trucks and cars. And so I pulled into Steve's driveway. And my dad had called me at that point. I was on the phone with Dad because when I got to Steve's door code, Steve has a different code on every door. So it's like, and I was like, Dad, what is his code? What is his code? And he went, I don't know. And I was like, finally I got it, and I got in, and I jumped on his four-wheeler with the girls, and I went to go in reverse, and his van was like right behind the four-wheeler. And I remember saying, Steve! And so I backed the van up and zoomed around, and we have like a bridge between my parents and the farms that cuts out the farm lane. So I went over that and got over there. And right when I pulled in, there's Josh. He said, let me take your kids up to Grace. The girls would be so excited. Okay, that'd be great. So instantly, it was like, I can't even express what a godsend just to be able to be like, here. And they went up and had a blast all day long. And that was just so huge, especially with my parents being gone and Steve and Brenda being gone. My grandparents were around, but it was just wonderful. And Ava got to have her fun day. And so then I went racing to find Neil. And I didn't get there, so again, I got the call at 12:13. It was just about 1 o'clock by the time I got there, and the barn had already collapsed. And I did remember hearing they were having trouble getting water. So they weren't even spraying it the whole time because they just didn't have enough water. And I mean, this barn, I want to say it's like 200 feet by 70. I mean, it's just a massive barn. It might even be bigger than 200 feet. And so I went around back, and you know, people are amazing. As much as there was gawkers out the ear, I mean, wow, the gawkers. But I mean, there was whole families, Granny on her walker, and like, just, you're like, who are these people?
Day.
It was Memorial Day. It's like, a cookout. Yeah. Wow. I shouldn't have said that. You gotta joke about stuff sometimes, but
Yes.
I went to the back. I have to crop that part out. I make jokes when things are bad. I went. Oh, that was not a good one. Anyways, I went around back, and Neil and Toby Stoller, I don't even quite, I'm terrible with who's who. Toby Stoller apparently does electrical. He was there with Neil, and they were running in the back room to try to save the electric in the other barn, which again is so Neil. And I'm like, get out of there! Like, and they're coming out like, and he took. Not that this matters, but I just got this water bottle, and he had texted me, I just need water. So I brought him water, and he went running in. These are the things you remember randomly, and he left it in there. And I said, it doesn't matter, but did you grab my water bottle? He said, no, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't know. I said, it's fine. It doesn't matter. But it smells like smoke, and it's just so weird. But sorry, I digress. It was just amazing the people that showed up. Kurt and Zach Steiner that he works for came, and Neil apparently had flown 130 miles an hour on his motorcycle, so thank the Lord he made it alive. And he instantly jumped on the skid steer, so Josh is there, and it sounds like Zach and Kurt Steiner must have got there pretty much shortly after. And he said, I'm going in the back. And they were all like, no, Neil, don't go in the back. But there was a huge gas tank in the back, and so he went and chopped the thing, and they said there was 15-foot flames all around him, and I know, thank the Lord, he was okay. He got it away from the barn. But he said when they got there, it's a long rectangle, and then there's an office and like an electrical room and stuff connecting, and then the other barn. So there's just a little strip connecting two long rectangles. And they were focused on the end of the rectangle, so that the connector is down here, the fire department. So Neil he said, I was just like hysterically trying to get them to go to the connecting part, forget this part, and go to the connecting part, and keep the rest of the barn from burning down. And then Josh ran and got his excavators, and they were pulling stuff back from that part. And so Neil was still trying to figure out the electric panel and stuff in the middle, and then a fire flared up in the middle. And anyways, they got it all put out, and truly the fire came, and not exaggerating, this close to the whole electrical and the all the controllers for that other barn, literally this close. And it's just, so what was saved, the gestation barn, which had the most animals in it, was saved, and the office is very burned up and smoky and stuff, but that was saved, and the electrical panels. So we were able to patch things up that night to connect it all. But I guess I thought when I prepared to tell this story, I thought, oh, it's going to end so happy, you know, like it's just a happy ending that now we lease the farm, and you know, it's a lease, so it's a lease to own. So at the end of the 7 years, which now it's about 6 years, he has the option to buy it, and then parts of his payments would apply. That's kind of what we worked out. So that's why I thought this was all ending, and you know, it's a lot easier to be like, God is so good, and now it's ending here, and it feels so, why? Because now we have to rebuild this barn. We have no desire to rebuild this barn. This barn, the building of it in the first place, was the beginning of losing Neil, and now we have to rebuild this barn. We won't get a dime out of it all. I mean, because the price has already been set. All the, you know, Ed will get a newer barn, but it's just so. And now, you know, we're in charge of the structure. So like, this is our cleanup and our rebuild, and you know how building even a house, it's just so much, let alone a hog barn. And now, you know, you're working with insurance companies, and it's just a nightmare. And it's really hard not to be like, okay, why do we have to do this? And I'm just praying, like, show us some good out of this, because I feel like all the stuff previously, there was a backbone of something good. We had Neil back, and you know, you lose everything, we still have Neil back, and we still have Neil back, and that is ultimately all I really care about. But you know, it's also a huge concern. Obviously, he's doing great, but it's a huge worry for me. This is not what he wants. I don't want him out there. I don't want him building this barn again. And I don't know. It's just not what I had planned. And I would love to just take the insurance money, pay our loan, and be done. And it's hard to think, this would happen a year ago. But no, it wouldn't have. I don't know what would have happened a year ago. It's God's timing, and we just have to trust that God is good, and his timing is perfect. And we've sure learned that suffering is good. It's good. So those are truths I know, and we just have to I keep saying to Neil, we have to just keep remembering that what God's done for us, and this doesn't make sense, and it seems so pointless, but that's all we have. So it's funny, because Amy and I had talked about like some questions we could all talk about and things, and it's like now those questions are so pertinent. You know, before it was like, you know, what's the purpose of suffering? And I'd be able to say like, well, you know, and now it's a little bit different. It's kind of like, suffering is just hard, and sometimes there's no seemingly purpose to it. But I know that someday, I really believe someday we'll be able to look back and see some purpose to this. But for right now, Neil is still sober, and he is a good dad, and he had the kids last night, and I got on my little camera in their bedroom, and they're reading. Last night I got on, and they're reading books and hugging their dad, and I just am reminded, like, that's all that really matters. I mean, this barn will be rebuilt,